I'm going to refresh and see if it'll let us do it. Hold on. Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Angela Cudger with Legacy Holistic Health Institute, and we are here again for the evolution of health coaching. I have someone absolutely amazing with me today. It is Michelle Green Rhodes. Now, Michelle is a registered nurse who has a long-standing background in both bedside care as well as entrepreneurship. So today we are going to be diving into a few things that might affect those individuals who are out there and that are looking for other things to do with their expertise as a nurse, but even as any other medical practitioner or someone who's looking for something else to do. Michelle, I actually saw a post that someone put in a group. They were looking to expand how they reach people, and she said she was an LPN, and she said, well, I'm looking for a way to expand how I reach people to reclaim my time and location freedom. And I actually saw this in one of the many living abroad groups, and more on that later, living abroad groups that I saw or that I'm inside of, and everyone was telling her a different scenario, Michelle, but all roads led to walking away from the bedside. And so she seemed really confused about what to do. And I want us to kind of talk about that today. So, Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do, and how in the world was Color of Wellness magazine actually formed or created.
Yes. Well, first of all, always thank you for having me, Dr. Ebony. I'm Dr. Angela. I think I saw Ebony pop up on the screen. How are you? I hope everyone's doing well out there. I am Michelle Green Rhodes, the owner, founder of Color Wellness Media. And we were birthed out of COVID. Pre-COVID, I was writing lots of books. So I had a passion for writing, but purpose came through the whole pandemic, where I repositioned my writing into magazine format, asked a few of my nurse friends to come along if they wanted to help reach the community, because we saw what COVID did to our community as African Americans. When I heard the statistic go across the screen of the news, you know, that Blacks were dying at 3 times the rate of any other race, it just shook me. I remember that day clearly, stopped me in my tracks, and I started asking myself, what are you doing? You know, you're sitting here with your writing and, you know, cush job, but I felt compelled to make a change. So I felt like it was a divine download, and I was like, okay, well, what do I do? And I felt like God said, you know, use what you have. And so I started like, okay, what do I have? I love to write. And my background was in managed care. So for 20 years, I saw the disparities right there in black and white. I saw the data. I saw the claims. I saw when people were getting care for the very first time in their lives. A lot of Black women getting care very late in life. So I think that's why God said, use what you have. All those years you saw firsthand. So put that into a magazine just to really reach that disparity and fill the gap there. So that's how we were born as a media company. And since 2020, we've grown into podcasting and video and events. So that's what we do.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. And so, Michelle, can you talk a little bit about what the Color of Wellness magazine covers, who it features, and what is the mission kind of the magazine itself?
Well, we're proudly the first Black wellness magazine by Black nurses. So, and I have to say that wellness magazine, because there's tons of, you know, wellness magazines out there, but to have Black nurses on the cover was a piece of that, was very integral in our mission, because we wanted to help increase health equity through health education. Well, to me, who better than to give that education than the nurses that you see, boots on the ground. Most times we're the ones on the floor, right there working alongside you as you heal. And we're the most trusted profession for the past 22 years, I believe now. It's been years. So I just took that with me to say, I haven't seen a platform where Black nurses were spotlighted. I haven't seen something that made our community stop and read and trust. It really is built on trust. That's a really big piece of our mission. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then also, you know, being able to still bring that education that our community needs. So our pillars are education, engagement, and equity.
I love it. I love it. And we need all three of those in in the nursing profession. I want to kind of shift gears now. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. We get a lot of nurses that come into health coaching, and rightly so. It's,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, one of the ways that, and we not, I mean, we have, there's nurse health coaching now. There's a lot of nursing
Yes.
organizations that teach and train in the space of equity, in the space of whole health and well-being. There are many, many organizations that do this, and I love it. And we're starting to see, like I saw an article the other day, and I think I shared it via email. We're starting to see organizations like CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, come on board with saying, okay, we can do more than we've been doing. We've got to start covering whole health. We've got to start covering other kinds of health and well-being. And so it's so important that we have, that nurses, especially, one of the most long-standing professions on the planet, have the support that they need, and they understand their pathway of when they're ready to exit the bedside. And so this conversation today, you guys, is about beyond the bedside. One of the things I want to talk about, Michelle, is, I don't know if there's a term for it, but I always call it, now I will say, I'm not a nurse, you guys. I have been an anesthetist, or anesthesia PA, and I have been a respiratory therapist. My bachelor's is in respiratory care. And then I also have a degree in clinical research. My PhD is in healthcare management. But I've worked alongside some of the most brilliant nurses on the planet. Some of my closest friends, closest
Yes.
girlfriends are nurses, right? My entire career was bedside, ICU, critical care, or the OR. Those are my only two areas, right? Even when I did clinical research. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things that I've been able to witness is nursing culture. All right. Nursing has a culture. Nursing has a rhythm.
Of its
It has
own.
it has okay. So nursing has a culture, has a rhythm, and I want us to talk about that, because
Mm-hmm.
that culture polices people into staying when they know that they could probably serve better and do more elsewhere. One of
Mm-hmm.
the things that we used to always say when we were, I didn't say it because I wasn't a nurse, I couldn't, say that, but they would always say nurses eat their young. And for a long time, I didn't understand what that meant, but it was something that people would say to kind of describe the culture. Later on in life, after I exited the ICU and those things and started Legacy and kind of moved forward in the health coaching direction, I
Yeah.
quickly realized that it ain't just nursing, it's these other professions that do it too. That was the first realization that I came to. Nurses are just more prominent, so they get you first, right?
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
first. And I started calling it career entrapment that makes people lead to burnout. And that's the conversation that I want to have today, because there are a lot of nurses that the bedside a long time ago. And this is what I mean by this. I don't mean that they are no longer capable. That's not what I mean. I mean that they are overqualified to be still at the bedside, that there
Mm-hmm.
is more wisdom that they've attained over their years of service as a nurse, that they can then show people and guide people in behaviors and lifestyle change. That's what
Yes.
I'm talking about. And
Got
so
it.
we have a lot of individuals that are afraid. They're in this space of career entrapment. And that means I'm kind of boxed in by the culture. I'm boxed in by what I don't know, because I don't know everything that's available to me. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yes.
kind of trapped into just not knowing who I'll become once I step away. So I want to kind of have that conversation about, Michelle, how did you know it was time to leave? Everybody's day one is different, right?
Oh, yes. But it's funny, once you leave, you realize what that was, and you'll meet a whole slew of people on the other side that says, happened to me too. So I will say that you just feel like it's only you. But you once again you make that leap, you realize that you are in the majority with many people who are who make that leap into entrepreneurship. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story. It really stemmed from And I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, just because we know it to be a fact. And the reason I say it's a fact, because they had to do a study in nursing to make this be so, right? After all these years where we felt it and we experienced it just recently, American Nursing Association published a study that showed there is rampant racism in the profession of nursing. So that's been a lot of our experiences for many, many years. Just not being stated, not being realized, but feeling that that's what was behind a lot of things. So I came into a major project, and my employer at the time helped them save. I was on a team, but it was over $1 million in savings that we did, about a year's worth of work to launch some programming after the American Health Act that Obama passed back then. Long story short, after it was over, of course, the team was disseminated. And if you wanted to stay, only 2 people would remain. I think there were 6 of us. And of course, I was one that was eliminated. So, but that wasn't the deal. I would have been okay with that. But I think that I had the epiphany was when I was asked to train the person who's taking my spot.
Your replacement.
That's when the light bulb said, yeah, let me think about this. How am I going to handle this, and what's next for me? Because if I can train her, it really was a senior thing. She's much older than I was. Definitely not, my skin tone. But I was, asked to train and give them all the stuff that I'd done and why I did what I did in my thought process. So it just made me think, if I could do this, then I can do it on my own. I could do it for myself. Mm-hmm. And I really thought I would be a managed care consultant for many years. So that's just my passion. So yeah, that was really the moment that the light bulb came on for me, because I felt that it was not fair. If I was enough to train, why wasn't enough to be selected? That was my thought.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And this is something that is experienced across everything. Across everything. When I went back to school for anesthesia, and I went to Emory School of Medicine, but when I went through their program, I think there was over 1,000 applicants in our class pool.
I'm sure.
And there were 4 of us that were Black, 100 people. So it was 1,000 applicants. Let me let y'all wrap y'all's head around this. There were 1,000 applicants. They only interviewed 101 of us.
Mm.
Okay. And only 40 of us got selected to be in the program. And only 4 of us were Black, 6 of us were minorities. So very, quite homogenous class, right? And so I've seen, like, I know that. And that's only one of the reasons people are either removed from this field, and like in your case, you were kind of downsized or moved aside, or however you want to describe it, but you were shifted. You had to shift in some kind of way. And that's when this epiphany came to you. If I'm great enough to do this for this person, this organization,
right,
why can't I do it for other organizations? And to everyone that's watching, why can't you do it in a completely different capacity, right? We have individuals, specifically nurses, who have been advocating for multiple decades now. You have nurses who have been educating for multiple decades now, being case managers for a long time now. And what they don't always see is how those skills transfer in something that can become their own health coaching practice, taking insurance on their own, where they call the shots, they reclaim their time, they get to decide who they work with and how they work with them, and they get to run their day. Mm-hmm. And so, Michelle, so you got removed or whatever, got shifted, right? Got your world
changed,
shifted in such a way, right?
Yes.
Now, after this was done, what did you feel, or how did things turn out for you?
So I took my severance pay and I started my practice, my business. I thought that, again, that was my thought process. I was gung-ho once I had that epiphany. I'm like, if I'm good enough to train, I'm good enough to consult, and immediately spent that money on a coach, because I did not know where to start and I didn't want to mess up. So like, this is all I got. I better go for it, because in 1 year, I really at that time gave myself 1 year. I was like, I got 1 year to do it. If not, I'm going to go back to work. That was what I told myself. So, yeah, I remember my first coach, and within, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, I had a book, my brand, wow. I had a photo shoot. She launched me beautifully. And so that the rest is history. Now we've grown into all these things. So it worked. And I don't regret it at all. I think it's just given me fulfillment that I didn't get. After, once you hit 20 years, you start thinking, what's next? So every day is a new day for me. It's a new way to get fulfilled by being the leader of this media company and doing some consulting on the side.
That's amazing. Can you guys see me? Let me know that you guys can see me.
You're frozen, but I think because it glitched and then it went frozen again, but I can hear you fine.
Okay, let me see.
It's probably just the internet.
I think so. Awesome. So someone says they can see me. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much. All right. So Michelle, so let's talk a little bit about some of the feelings that individuals who are looking to shift their career, what are some of the things that they're going to feel when they know that it's time to make a shift? Because for everyone, it doesn't always happen in the way that it happened with you. Right. They may feel like I've given a lot to the space that I'm in, so I've got to make sure that I move forward in a different way. So share a little bit about what were the things that are going to come up or that they're going to be faced with, and it leads them to believe that it may be time to make that shift.
Ooh, so a few things. I know we're talking about burnout prevention because I think that's always a biggie. People, most times when you're given that much care constantly over and over again, you're faced with what we call early on, it's compassion fatigue. So I recognized that was a very early sign when I did kind of get tired of what I was doing, meaning you have a blah feeling. You're kind of emotionless, like you're starting to realize that I should care about the situation, but I don't care as much. And why don't I care as much? You get self-aware to it. So there was a period when I went through that. If you're starting to feel like you're not caring as much as you should, when you should, you could be moving into compassion fatigue where you've given so much that now it's really time to rest and start to pour back into yourself. So that's one of the early signs. If you don't intervene, I will say this as a person that has gone through full burnout. Now that came a little bit later and I can share those lessons after jumping into the business. But yeah, when it comes to burnout, we really want to prevent that. So it does take you being very self-aware. I do think it's important that we work on our emotional intelligence and have rest infused into every day in any way that we can, and plan vacations as well. So those are some things I saw early that I experienced, I'll say. Yeah.
Well, I think that's amazing. So I like talking about the compassion fatigue and the burnout. So I want to kind of expound on that. Like we even have specific corporate trainings that are geared towards healthcare burnout. And so I want to kind of chat about that just a little bit, because I personally felt like from what I watched within nursing culture that burnout was a part of the culture. Right? Did you experience that too?
Yeah, and it's very prominent with many professions that are caregivers. So it's important that we learn how to avoid it and how to, like I mentioned, infuse rest into our daily schedules and yearly schedules. Because if it's not prevented, it takes a while to come out of, basically. And it varies for every person. Because I remember every day I'm like, is this the day I'm going to feel like doing something? And for a while, it just took me to rest for weeks, months, to finally say, okay, now I feel like myself today. I can get some work done, because it really literally burns through your emotion vault, I think. So I think that nurses should be aware of what those symptoms look like. You know, if you're getting more snappy, just tired all the time, very cynical or negative, you know, approach. I remember my mindset feeling much different. You don't feel as positive as you think you should be. Then those are some signs that you might need to take some time off.
Mm-hmm. I remember one of the things that they implemented at one of the units that I worked in was that you could only work so many hours before you had to take off, right? And I remember, Michelle, people getting very upset that they felt like their overtime was capped, that they felt like, you know, the amount of time that they got to be with their patients was capped. Some people were so engrossed in continuity of care, which I get it. I get it. You want to be with that patient for as long as they are there for care. And you want to make sure the same care that you're giving, the same quality, the same level continues. Yes, that's important for positive patient outcome, but the amount of care or the quality of that care decreases the more hours that person works without a break. And so I remember them implementing no more than, I think it was like 6 12-hour shifts. It was still some ridiculous amount, right?
Wow.
It was no more than 6 12-hour shifts consecutively before you needed a break. And so for some people, they had like 8 in a row lined up. Some people had like 12 in a row lined up. And they had money goals, they had all kinds of things. But one of the things that we don't necessarily see as providers is how that shortens the lifespan of our career and it escalates burnout. It puts us in a place to where, oh, we feel like this is the culture. Because if enough people kind of go along with it, that's like, I don't know, like double dutch. Like once the rope starts turning, everybody's on.
Can you hear me okay? I can't hear you. Well, it looks like she's frozen.
For those individuals,
I got you now.
Those individuals, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we're back now.
You can hear me? Yes. Awesome. Sorry about that, guys. But for those individuals like me who only wanted to do just my 3 shifts, which is what my contract stated, I was kind of looked at like, I don't know about that. Like, you're not a team player, you know? And so, you know, I know that the culture of healthcare has become such that when individuals stand up to it, they kind of get the scarlet letter, I'll say.
I agree.
But I want to talk a little bit about what individuals can do with their knowledge, especially, and I'm specifically talking to those people who've got at least 5 years or more into the profession. You know, they've been at different facilities, they have done some patient education, they've done some different things with their patients. What would you say are some different roads? We know health coaching is one, but what would you say are some different pathways that they can start to look at to take?
Yeah, this is really awesome. So I really kind of want to break this up in 3 parts because I want to say for, you know, the burnout piece and the culture piece before we move on, that because of those trends in the culture and nurses reporting that, you know, on surveys, that things are slowly taking a turn because of what they call a healthy workplace. So I would ask about those types of initiatives if I were interviewing, you know, what types of things do you do to help promote a positive culture, just so you are aware before you take that opportunity. But then also being casting your vision, I think about a good 5 years out and knowing where you want to go. I think sometimes what happens is we come in as new nurses, not sure where you want to go. You just want to get some experience. I'm just going to ride it out. And before you know it, 1 year turns into 5 years. right? And then you meet people like, I've been on this for over 10 years, right? You didn't come in with a vision. So know what it is you want to, where you want to go. That way you're working towards it. You feel like I'm almost out, or you get what you need and you're out. So make sure that career ladder, which again, most times is in place, but if you don't have a vision, you can get stuck. So I just want to say that, because that will help, I think, prevent burnout. But when it comes to other things you can do, I actually have an ebook on it. So if you want me to share it with you, I'll be happy to share it with you. Dr. Angela, you can share with your audience 5 things they can do to kind of create a personal brand and things they can do with nursing. But it all depends on the passion. I will say that, because there's so many things that one can do. We all have so many different backgrounds. So some people do things that are right in line with what they did before inside of nursing, and just take that and expand and coach or consult with it. But some go totally in a totally different new way, something in, you know, as bakers or cooks or chefs, or like me with media, people ask me, like, how did you do that? I had to be coached through it, but I really wanted to marry the two. So it really depends on the passion that the person has, what their mission is. That mission is so vital, because now you know why you're doing what you're doing. Not just, you know, wanting to do something different or wanting to make more money. No, this is mission driven for me. And so you want to leave that legacy behind if you're going to put this time and money and effort into it. But if you're one of the people that say, hey, just give me something to start with, most times, you know, we see right now, coaching and consulting is very popular. I love what you're doing, Dr. Angela. So I think it's a great way to take your skills and, like, you know, create your own brand through the beautiful journey of health coaching, which is now health coaching, get paid a little bit more as well. So from what I understand, you can correct me on that. Yeah, so I think there's just so many things to do. You have to find what you love and create a brand around that and make it work. So that would be my suggestion.
I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So now we have looked at kind of some things to understand not necessarily which path, but the types of pathways that are available to us, which is usually based on a person's passion. Because some individuals might want to do things that are directly connected to where they already work, whereas other individuals might say, I'd like to exit that space altogether. Either way, there is space for you in the coaching and consulting industry, especially if you're a nurse that worked in a specialty, right? That's so much more important now too. And so I want to kind of back up a little bit to talk about burnout, because that is one of the things that is prevalent, right?
Yes,
and I know it's one of the things that a lot of research, a lot of resources have gone into educating about burnout. You know, burnout leads to all different kinds of disease processes. It leads to significant stress and strain on the body. And it also leads to resistance in making decisions for yourself, right? It leads to a lot of different fears and things as well. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about what your experience with burnout has been, whether it's your ability to coach people through it, or whether it is something that you have experienced yourself. I definitely experienced burnout, but after you share yours, then I'll share mine.
Yeah, you know, like I mentioned, for me, the full-fledged burnout, because I do think that there were steps. I do recall when I was, like I said, inside of nursing, that I did experience compassion fatigue, and I recognized it like there was just something that said, you should have cared about that statement. Why didn't you respond to it? Or why didn't you mention this or whatever? So I did check myself, and that's when I knew I had to leave that particular role. And it was time for me to do something different. So I do think that's one thing, is just increasing your self-awareness, your emotional intelligence. I've been through that firsthand experience. Once you get those skills, behind you, it'll help you. But yeah, for my journey, it came after moving into entrepreneurship. So after starting that coaching brand, helping other people write books. I mean, we did that for a few years. Then we moved into, those That's when those launches and live launches were, let's just launch all the time, and full team, everything. But for some reason, my mind just said no. And I don't know why, but it was just like, nope, I ain't doing another one. And I just was shocked. Like I felt like I was like kind of stopped in my tracks, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it kind of crept up on me slowly. And again, I think it's from missing those red flags, because you have them, like I mentioned, you have something that checks you in your spirit, you have something that makes your mind, or you have to look back, or you're making mistakes, or you're lazy, or you're tired, or you're missing family time, which was a concern with me. So I had to stop, redo my schedule, make sure I infuse vacations, which I wasn't doing as well. So those red flags are there if you watch for them, and then put things in place so that they don't go, unchecked. So that's my story. And then, like I mentioned, it took 18 months, in all honesty. Now, there were good and bad days in between, but to truly feel like my old self again, it was a long process of just being very tired, unmotivated, and kind of feeling defeated for a while. And it was emotional. It wasn't the business or the money. It was more so me. So I really urge, your students and anyone watching to sit down and research burnout. Just be prepared. Do what you can prior, so that you don't go into that hole, because it's hard to climb out of.
Yeah. And it could cause you to be there longer than you should be. And that time can just be used to like live your passion, live what you really are truly passionate about. Right. Man, I remember burnout. Ooh-wee. Baby. That's one of the reasons why I started. That's one of the reasons why I started Legacy. I'll tell the others during some other interviews, but I remember, and I always tell people, the longest time I was in the operating room, uninterrupted, no breaks, completing an anesthetic for a patient was 22 hours.
Ouch.
22 hours straight. Wow. And I can't even tell you what the procedure was. I just know, I remember I was on call, so I had worked my shift that day. And it was time for everyone else to leave. ORs, we work from 6 to 3. Pretty basic schedule, 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. Shift is usually over by 3:30, right? So by the time kids are getting out of school, your shift is over. And that's on call, you have to do that whole 24 hours. I worked 22 of those hours, right? I had the next day off, but it wasn't until the next day at like 6 a.m. I also, so these are like little points where I was like, okay. And let me tell you, this is somebody, if you're somebody in the comments where you're working these kind of hours, or you're required to work these kind of hours, the human brain, the human body is not designed. I mean, of course, you can go that long without food, without water, without a bathroom break, but after a while, it's just inhumane, right? Right. And so that was the first time I realized, and this is what sent me, and I'm gonna tell you why afterwards. That was the first time I realized that my health and well-being was being dictated by somebody else. And that was almost enough to get me, right? Yeah. But that was the first time I realized that. By the time I did that shift, I had been in that particular profession for like 5 years. I spent 18 years in respiratory therapy, right? And so I remember saying, someone else is going to dictate how your life is lived and what you die from. If you consistently work like this and let them stress you like this, let them treat you like this, like you've been standing for almost 20 hours right now.
Wow.
And so you talking about somebody who was stooping down, like trying to stand on my legs, stretching my back. And I was like, this is someone else dictating how you live and how you're going to probably leave this earth, because this life isn't sustainable, right?
No.
This isn't sustainable. And so I remember thinking, and then after that, and the only reason that stood out to me was because at that point I had been a bodybuilder, I had been a CrossFit competitor. So I didn't like somebody else dictating how my body was going to feel. I didn't like that. And I didn't like feeling old and run down before my time. Right? I was in my 30s. I had lower back pain. I had shoulder pain consistently. And I was like, this isn't the norm.
Yeah.
You know,
Not
those cultures believe that it's the norm. That was supposed to somehow be martyrs to the profession. And now that I live the way that I do, it was bananas.
No, ma'am.
Like, what was I doing all those years? Like now that I realized what health coaching can do for me as a health coach, the knowledge, and what it can do for me financially, I just sit back and I'm like, what in the hell was I thinking? In my best years, right? I'm in my best years still, but still, I'm like, what was I thinking?
Right.
You know, and it's important for people watching because they feel it. The average working nurse is in her late 60s. I know you feel it.
Wow. Well, yeah, I was definitely thinking about, back strains, and because we lift a lot. So I know yours was more mental. You had to be very sharp and astute so that you can make those rapid changes if you need to. And ours is more physical. They're helping to lift patients and move them and rotate them every 2 hours. It eventually takes a toll. So I can't tell you how many nurses I know with back, they're out, back problems and shoulders for sure. And surgeries, and just never the same after that. And then nursing may not, if things change for you, you're kind of forced into change. So there's sedentary type, work. And then of course there's always entrepreneurship, but you don't want it to be after the fact. You want to, make that decision and move now.
Yeah. And that was the beginning for me, because then my eyes opened to like the entire culture. And I was just like, yeah, I'm here to help people, but not at the sacrifice of my physical body and my mental prowess, right? Yes. And so that was the first thing for me. And then the second thing, and this is strange, Michelle, so you have to jump in on this one, but the second thing for me was the rate of nosocomial infection. Okay. Like those infections caused from within the healthcare system, and how many people succumb to those infections. And that for me, I remember going to a staff meeting where they covered those, and the number of people who had passed away or who had transitioned from maybe someone not washing their hands, something it was nosocomial. It had to do with the staff, right? And the number, one is too many, right? One is too many people that have to transition from that. But when I saw like the number for our hospital, and then I saw the number for the US, and they were like, well, we're below the US. That was when I stopped losing sleep. That was when my hair started falling out. And I'm being honest, that was when my hair started falling out. That was when I started having panic attacks before my cases in the OR. And then I was like, I gotta go, because now it's wearing on what I said I was going to do, and that was help people. Now we're not doing that, right?
It's
We're
from the inside out.
Issue. Right. And our numbers were high. I'm not gonna name the hospital because I worked at a bunch of them, but our numbers were very high. Okay. Like the equivalent of like a 747 jet. That's a lot of people. It just didn't sit well with me. And I was like, now I have to go, because now I'm no longer a part of what I thought I was a part of. And you have a lot of people that are like, well, but you pay 6 figures for that degree, 5 figures for the exam, the licensing, And all of that spells career entrapment, that just because you paid for it doesn't mean you have to stay there in it.
That's right.
And it doesn't mean that your knowledge can't stretch further and create other opportunities for other people, which is what I've done. Right. And so Keisha says, not only that, but there's extensive periods of time with people who could also impact your mental and emotional health negatively. Oh, yeah, co-workers, families that gather around patients,
Ooh.
the drama.
I'm living
Every
witness
single
for
time
that.
you come to work, it's going to be some drama.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it just reminds you of, for those of you who all have school-age children or have had anyone, family members, when something's going on with that child, like, we're going to be right there in that room. We want to talk to the teacher, we want to talk to the principal. Like, we want, be on it. It's like that when it comes to a patient, like, what happened and what's going on. I need to talk to so-and-so. So you get caught in the mix of family coming down, because of their family member. So yeah, all of those things are very stressful, and it's a part of healthcare, unfortunately. But the need for I feel like great communication is the core of that piece, which a whole nother conversation for another day. But it's so important that we communicate, clearly to patients and families.
Yeah, and to each other, like that. Although yesterday I was with it, today I'm not. And I don't feel any kind of way about it. I don't want to hear what's going on with you and Tyrone. Like, I just don't. I've got my own stuff for crying out loud. I don't want to hear that. I just come to work, take care of my patients without going home with your stuff on me too. And people don't understand that that's an energetic field that you're in.
Ooh, yes. Tyrone.
So like when I came to realizing that I've been sharing time and space with this energetic field of sick care. It was just it was so eye-opening for me. And I was just like, you have to not only exit this space, but you gotta cognitively do something to help clear out where you've been or what it has caused you to think and believe. Right? The world is not sick and dying. People that work in hospitals tend to think that. There are a lot of folks thriving later on in life too.
They don't see that. Yeah, they don't see that part.
They don't see that. They live in this entrapped like bubble, and they think this is all it's ever going to be, not realizing that when you exit, and Michelle, you know this too, it's like everything else that God put in you just wakes up.
Yep.
Everything else is there, your gifts, your talents, and they truly do start to make room for you.
Absolutely. They're kind of waiting, right, for some space. So it's amazing when you create that space, it just flourishes. I would have never guessed, about the magazine. I feel like that's what happened. I kind of made room and the magazine happened. But yeah, you do have to have room for that. So I thank you for saying that for those who might be thinking about, coming to your program. It's so important to make space for it. And what I do, I think you might have taught me this, one of your live streams back in the day. Like, I like to future cast. Like, I see myself, a ways down the line. I'm not, thinking about what's going on right now. So that pushes me to keep going. Like, I'm working towards that, Michelle. And I can see her very clearly in what we're doing. So I need to make that happen. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
Important. And I think future casting is so powerful. And future casting is one of the things that breaks entrapment. It just does. It's like, okay, here's the city or state that you live in, but here's the entire planet that you live on. Yeah. Right? So how do you get those people over there in Australia to get to know you? Right? In Georgia or in Tennessee or in North Carolina or in Florida? How do you get those people who are trying to live better to get to know what you got going on? Mm-hmm. And it's so critical. And I think that being able to imagine ourselves outside of where we currently are, no matter what level of success, start to view am I outside of that? So for those of you that may not know, I'm in Michelle, Guadalajara, Mexico. That's where I live. Um, no, there's no cartel here, from what I understand. They are. When you look at the history, this is one of the. It's pretty incredible if you're a business owner. When you look at the history, if you look at Narcos Mexico, that's the story of. That's the history of Guadalajara. It's worth watching. It's on Netflix. But I digress. What I want to say is, I got invited to a group of people. Right before y'all ask me, are you safe? Are you? Oh my God, it's a great life here. But I will say, I got invited out with a group of people here from everywhere: Taiwan, India, parts of America, Rio, people from Guadalajara, like from all different kinds of places. There's about 25 of us that got together for dinner. And one of the people asked me, so tell us about you. Tell us who you are. And I was both grateful. I felt both gratitude and guilt about being able to say who I was without saying what I do. Because some people think that living is saying, oh, I'm a nurse. That's not living. That's just what you do to make sure you can meet your bills. That's just what you do, right? Oh, I'm a mom. Okay, that's another hat that you wear. But who are you truly? Who are you really? And being able to answer, I would never have been able to answer that question if I was still in the medical field. Never. I would never have been able to discover who I was, never have been able to even scratch the surface of what I can be had I not exited the field. Right?
That's good. And
it takes some work. Pathway for us. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, it takes some digging and finding, discovering. Sometimes you have to discover that after life changes, right? But yeah, it's good to be able to know that who you are,
Yeah.
Based on your soul.
Yeah, and be okay with not being the same as it was 5 years ago. Like, be okay with the fact that you've changed in the past year, or like your desires are different. The way you want to serve is different. What you want to feel is different. But it's important that you don't identify who you are with what you do. That's because I can assure you that outside of US culture, no one cares about that. They don't really care about your credential. They care about the type of person you truly are. And that's what they're asking you about. And I remember saying, I feel kind of guilty knowing that. Like, I feel guilty that I'm able to do this. Like, I'm able to be here and live. And I'll never forget what one of the people at the table said. Well, take your guilt back to the US, because we don't do that here. We live. I was like, I love it. Take that guilt right on back to the US, because that's not how we live here. And make no mistake, I love being American. I love being Black. I love being American. I love being African American. But I love the way that I'm able to live elsewhere even more. And I will say that. Being willing to walk away of pieces of a culture will begin to show you who you truly are and how you can actually help that culture. How you can actually help that culture. Right? She says, life changes bring you quickly to who you are truly. It does. It does. It does. And what you're really made of. Before we hop off, Michelle, I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the major shifts that you see happen with nurses who come to you and they come through your brand, or they're featured and they share their stories. What are some of the things that they say were their breakthrough moments, or that when they work with you as a coach or as a consultant, they start to see as a breakthrough for them? What are the things that you see?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece is the amazement that they were able to achieve this goal. Like it seemed unachievable. If you listen to a few of my testimonies, like I never thought that this could happen. So just the belief in self, to me, is the biggest change. If I can do this, I can now do the next thing. I can now do this. So it just sparks a whole train of differences after either coaching or being in the magazine. There's some external things that happen as a result of being in the magazine. So, of course, visibility is what that's all about. So we've had people attract all sorts of opportunities, from speaking, keynote speeches, to be able to land paid training opportunities, being able to get featured on, I will say, renowned, not world renowned, but podcasts. We've had a few of those. And then, of course, connecting with bigger brands. So we're just here to help them get the visibility. But I think that internal work, that belief system, is probably the biggest transformation. It's just to say that I am/was a nurse as a role, but I'm so much more than that. That's the biggest thing I see.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it.
We're not framed that way. Even the mindset about money or charging or high ticket anything is just not a part of a nurse's culture. We're nurturers, we're educators. We're able to, provide care. So that's been a big, big shift for a lot of clients who just, I don't know if I can charge that. Well, yes, you can. You can charge a one charge. Well, let's look at why you want to charge this. So we'll break down the backside of that. But pricing, even that piece is huge. So yeah, I should share what I went through and what I've been taught, and then for them to experience and it happen and make some shifts in that, it's amazing to me.
That's awesome. And then I want to lastly talk about, because I just feel like there's so much value we gain from being providers, and there's so much value that, so many there's so much value in our transferable skill set into other industries and other lines of work. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk a little bit about what you feel like are the top value-based things, information, care, that like nurses can bring to the table with them, that
transferable skills. And they do make it really great entrepreneurs once we learn the system, the culture. So because we're already doing so much of it in just in a different atmosphere, right? So, just to start off with, I've really been, as you all know, like my brand is around teaching and sharing. So the education piece, that's something that you can take anywhere. And so we know coaches aren't teachers, but they are educators, and they're able to share knowledge, which we're already doing as nurses. So I think that's a big, big piece. Bring your education skills over to the other side and let it just guide you. Now, for me, as the coach in me, I've been coaching for years, unofficially. Started as a certified mentor when I was a nurse at the VA. Back in 2008 is when it started the thing for me. For my professional development mentor said, you need to become a certified mentor. They had a structured program for it. So I was asked, and so I did it. I took the class, and that's when I fell in love with this whole like self-improvement / transformation vehicle. So back then I was helping them prepare for, their nursing exams and passing, and now moving into, a full-fledged nurse. So that's really what that was about back then. But that morphed into coaching. So, back then they had something called motivational interviewing, which we did, which is an evidence-based communications protocol. So being able to help people through the way I communicated. So it just really latched to me. And that's why I use it today. But those are some beginnings. So if you find yourself loving to help people get, meet their goals or transform, or if you love to push them towards, their next through the way you communicate, then coaching will be wonderful for you. So that I think that should be a big piece that you talk about, Dr. Angela, is like, are you, a communicator and you enjoy the process of change? Some people don't like change. They want things to stay the same. And so it's hard for them. It's like, I don't have time for that, because there's a lot of patience involved. But when we talk about change, here we are. It takes time, right? For for us to change ourselves, let alone helping someone else change. And you got to sit there and wait and watch. And if they change their mind, be okay with saying, okay, well, I'm here when you're ready to keep moving forward. So learning that as well. Are you patient enough to walk someone through the process of change while they meet their plan B? I think that's, the point B, excuse me, is a big skill set that coaches or potential coaches need to bring into the arena.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I absolutely love that. And so Keisha says they can bring managers, they're planners. They know how to stick to schedules, especially if they distribute medications. They know how to manage multiple tasks and different types of clients at once.
Huge.
So they know, and they know how to not mix it. Like Mrs. Jones has this going on. Mr. Jones has that going on, right? They know how to keep things straight. They also are great at compartmentalizing. Even if they have 50 million other things going on in life, they know how to compartmentalize and not bring that to work, and still be, like, in most cases, on point. And a lot of times you won't even know it's anything wrong with them, which is scary. But
that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. And then of course, great customer service, like Keisha said. Yeah,
that's a huge one. That's a huge one for sure. So many things we can do, right? But I just think that for me, the patience, letting someone walk through it, and I'm just patient enough to walk through it with them, has been the game changer for me. Because I do think, as, say, quote unquote managers, we're looking for a specific outcome. We want to get this range, want to hit this target, where it's not like that with coaching. This is its own person's decisions, and you have to be able to take it or not. So right. I do think that might be a struggle for some nurses. We want to just get it done and hit this target, where with coaching, it's all at the person's, desire.
Yeah. Absolutely right. They find it challenging to flip that switch. I remember having a nurse in my class that was like, I don't understand. If I have the answer, why can't I just tell them? I don't understand that. What are we doing again? Like, what exactly is this? This is letting someone else lead, right? Their life. This is putting someone in a space of empowerment. That's what this is. This is the opposite of what we do. Yeah. That's the opposite
empowerment is huge, because it will feel this sense of power, like, wow, I did this, I said this, as opposed, how it is when someone tells us to do something. Okay, I'll do it. But if you sit with yourself and you go through this whole process, and something hits you out of the blue, and you feel that rise of energy, like, I found the answer within me, right? It is life changing, because they know that was from deep down inside. So that's why it's so powerful, or it's much different than just giving the answer. Let them feel it, right? Because when they leave, nobody can take that away from them.
No. So before we hop off, two things I want to do. One, for those of you who are interested in being part of this program and you are ready to do something that is different and take the path of health coaching, you have the ability to send the word enroll to this number, and then we will give you a call or text you back after you send that enroll over. There are some scholarships still available for those individuals who are joining us with cohort 45. And there is one full scholarship that is drawn every month, and that person must be notified on the live stream that they won that scholarship. And so that's going to be drawn on the week of August 8th, whichever live stream that is. That's when that's going to be drawn. So make sure that you tune in and that you are there and listening. And then the last thing I want to do is, Michelle, I want you to, number one, how they can get that ebook you promised them. So you can give me the link. If you're going to drop the link here in the chat, let us know. So they'll know how they can get that ebook from you. And then number two, how do they keep up with you in Color of Wellness magazine? What do they do to make sure that they are looking for volume of the magazine?
Yeah. So thank you. First of all, let me give you this one for the time today. This has been great as usual. I love our conversations anytime we can catch up. So this has been great. But just to share our stories and what has happened since, being in healthcare and now outside of, it's still in healthcare, but working for yourself, it's been such a journey. So I just thank you for the time. But yeah, if you go to medianurses.com, there should be a pop-up, ask if you would like to learn 5 ways to launch a brand as a nurse. Head on over there and it'll go to you. You'll receive it via email. And then for those of you who are interested in our magazine, you go to Media Nurses. Now you do have to put the www in front of it. I have to get that worked on with my website, but you have to put that first, medianurses.com/magazine, and you can download the magazine for free. It will ask you for your email, and it's emailed to you. So check it out. Let me know how you like the magazine, and I can't wait to hear back from all of you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Michelle, and everyone who has been here sharing time and space with us. We truly appreciate you. Even if you're catching a replay, we'll see you guys on the next one. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Everybody, thank you.